Hello, good morning, everyone. Black Beans Simpson here today. So I came across this article this morning. It is article written by the Voice of Europe by MRR. Came out yesterday about the UN countries adopt the Migration Pact and how they applaud themselves for several minutes. I didn't watch the video. If there's a video out there of them applauding themselves, I'm sure there is, because usually within those parliaments or whatever you want to call them over there, they usually are always being recorded. Kind of like how we have a lot of the Congress and Senate. Anytime they're in session, they're being recorded. So I haven't really read this, but at least not this article. I have heard some things about it. So supposedly there's claims on how the Migration Pact or this new I don't even know what you want to call it. They call it the Migration Pact, but how it's supposed to have really no rules on if you're legal or illegal immigrant. At the same time, you can't have any. They're saying that you can't have any form of there's censorship on talk about it. So once this gets put in place, if you criticize illegal immigrants or whatever in, in some fashion, it somehow that's against the law. So there's more limitation on free speech. But they're the people who would enact it are claiming that's not true. Which happens to be people who have in the past who've lied multiple other times. And it was voted in by people too who were going to oppose it. So it's like, what changed? What changed? So I'm going to read through here because I like I said I didn't really read this, but so UN member states that have now approved the Globalist Migration Pact, which is said to make all migration a human right. I just want to stop right there for a second. All migration. Uh, Humans don't migrate thousands of miles. That's not. That has never existed in the entire. I mean, unless there's like some crazy natural, and I still don't think it would kill them off. You just, I don't. Do we do this with animals and species of plants and that? Whenever there's like, do we just migrate them all over the place, all over the world? No, there's actually laws against that. There's laws that are against invasive species because some species are not as tolerable or as resistant as others. It's simple as that, and we need to start looking at humans as being kind of the same thing, which is why we need to start going back to a simulation. Simulate people into your culture. We'll solve a lot of these issues, but we'll continue. The agreement with the agreement was passed to a several-minute long applause. God, you gotta be some narcissist people. When world leaders and the UN upper management met at the Marrakesh conference in Morocco, which began Monday, strong criticism has been directed at the agreement over the last few weeks. Several countries have withdrawn. But criticism came too late because now the agreement has been approved. I do not hear any objections. The text is adopted, said meeting chairman Nazar Borita. Borita? I have no idea. It's interesting last names. At the UN conference on Monday, after the applause followed for several minutes, the countries that withdrew from the meeting claim, among other things, that the agreement will promote more migration and restrictions the national sovereignty of the states. According to them, the agreement makes no distinction between refugees and illegal immigrants, and migration is made a human right. The Pact defenders have claimed that the agreement is not legally binding, but even politically binding agreements can ultimately have legal consequences. Hungary Prime Minister Viktor Orban have said that future legal cases will use the document as a reference point. It's it's interesting. I didn't realize this was more of a political binding agreement rather than a. That's why I guess if they call it a migration pact. So it's like a pact between these politicians who got together to do something, to not push laws or to change things up to change rules without actually changing rules. I don't know. I don't really get that. I don't really get that. I live in America, so I don't understand these nations as well as like America. But what's interesting is that if it's a essentially illegal binding agreement that was made by politicians, and somehow when politicians do that, that can be used as like a reference point, like Prime Minister of Hungary says. Well, what the courts can start doing is use that during court cases. So if a legal immigrant goes to court and next thing you know, the judge is using this new migration pact as a reference point, which then now sets a precedent within the court system itself. And then, however, precedents are settled within the European court system, that it will just create another whole shitload of another debacle. Because then you got to challenge the courts to either overturn what was already said and done. It just becomes really difficult. So there's a deep reason for why this is happening. They're trying to make this into law. They're trying to make it migration seem like it's a human right. But even though humans never traveled like thousands of miles, a vast difference, they just didn't. It's just that's too. You'd be going into other people's territories at that point. And yeah, it's just that's no good. I was just and then you're also when you're traveling that far, while usually when a lot of these people they don't have nothing. So when you're going into another area, you're going into an area with completely different language, completely different culture. So now either the culture that's taking you in either has to adapt to you, or you have to adapt to them. Which it just so happens that these European countries, these Western European nations, are they're not enforcing. They're not enforcing any form of assimilation, which is causing a very, very disruptive action within their society, and the blunt of the people who are getting the blunt of this hit. It's not even the immigrants. It's the taxpayers of these nations there, which just happen to be a bunch of white people, and there's just other minorities, and because those countries tend to be a little bit more diverse, or they're slightly diverse, but all that load of people is putting a burden on the population that's already there, and it to even they're one of the arguments is they want to make the European nations too more diverse. Well, the fact is, like I say, it was already diverse. There's already people there. Like, how much do you need to make it diverse? Do you need to make it so diverse that there's not one single culture that can claim majority? Is that the goal? Because if that's the goal, why isn't that same goal being applied and other nations like Africa or China or India or even Japan. If you like this podcast, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, still like and subscribe. Comment down below if you have any advice. Thank you. Have a great day.